That one glorious word represents more than just the geography between the Sabine and the Rio Grande. It represents a unique idea and way of life. A life of rugged individualism, proud self-reliance, gritty toughness, and fierce independence. That is what made Texas, and that is what will save her again. Howdy, folks. Sam Houston here. I want to thank you for tuning into the Feed Bandit podcast. Feed Bandit is the Texas first outdoors brand built by rabid Texans, for rabid Texans, and all those who aim to be one someday. We unapologetically promote the ideals that shape our Texas pride and Texas first patriotism through our love of hunting, the outdoors, and the gear and apparel we create. Texas, above all else, preserve the tradition, protect the legacy. Check us out at feedbandit.com. And to repeat that great rallying cry from a former colleague of mine, liberty or death. Now, enough of my talking. Here are a couple of bandits that love Texas as much as I do. Enjoy.
Howdy, folks. Welcome back to the Feed Bandit podcast. Jimmy back with you, and I hope your deer season is going according to plan. Hope there's been a lot of success out there. Hearing some good stories from folks about some of the deer they're getting, some of the fun times they're having with friends. Hope it continues through the rest of the season, and some of y'all getting ready for waterfowl and some other things. Hope those go well for you as well. In this one, I'm going to continue with our series going through some whitetail strategies. But first, I want to talk about a little bit of Texas history, as we're wont to do on this podcast. And this one is for a little event that happened mid-November, way back in 1835. So it is about the Tampico Expedition. After his election to the presidency of Mexico in 1833, Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna left the inauguration of the new liberal policy to the vice president, Valentin Gomez Farias, went into political retirement for a few months, and emerged as leader of the reaction. He assumed dictatorial powers, dissolving state and national legislatures. Insurrections broke out at various points: Zacatecas, Coahuila, Texas all refused to accept centralism, holding to the Constitution of 1824. In New Orleans, a movement led by George Fisher and Jose Antonio Mejia began at Banks Arcade on October 13th, 1835. The members of the movement raised men and money for an expedition to attack Tampico in an effort to stir up an insurrection in the eastern states of Mexico. Mejia, who was to lead the expedition, communicated the plan to the Texas leaders, who approved it, although some, Stephen F. Austin among them, advocated an attack on Matamoros instead. Counting on the support of the liberals, known to be among the members of the garrison at Tampico, Mejia and his 150 efficient emigrants left New Orleans on November 6, 1835, on the schooner Mary Jane. The schooner ran aground off the bar of Tampico on November 14th. This disaster, together with a premature uprising of the garrison on November 13th, and the arrival of fresh troops from Tuxpan, upset Mejia's plans. He attacked the city held by Gregorio Gomez on November 15th, was defeated, withdrew on the American schooner Halcyon, and embarked for the mouth of the Brazos River, where he landed his troops on December 3rd. 31 prisoners were left at Tampico. Of these, 3 died of wounds, and the others were tried by court-martial and shot on December 14th. So that's another little, what they call it, expedition, mini battle, whatever you want to call it, of the Texas Revolution that not many people have heard of. So hope that was of interest to you. Yeah, it was Santa Anna really stirred up a hornet's nest when he basically threw out that Constitution of 1824, hence the famous flag, the 1824 flag, which is which is a symbol, truly of freedom down here in Texas. Something that, in my opinion, should be hoisted a lot more. Now, funny enough, if you wanted to have the equivalent flag, I guess it would probably be more, I don't know, like the U.S. flag. Yeah, I guess it would be maybe the U.S. flag, but where maybe, where the stars are, perhaps it would be, what is it, 1790, 1787, excuse me. Yeah, 1787 when it was adopted. So yeah, I mean, that I guess would be the equivalent now. What we would hoist on the old flagpoles across Texas. It's actually not a bad idea. I'll have to make a note of that. So we've been reading the book Whitetail Strategies, No Nonsense Approach to Successful Deer Hunting by Peter Fiducia. And this next chapter is chapter 5, and it's entitled Wind and Whitetails. Although every chapter in this book offers good advice about deer and how to hunt them, the following sentences are momentous to consistently successful buck hunting. The number one factor to shoot a buck each fall, other than C plus PT times C equals CS, which we talked about last chapter, and that's concentration plus positive thinking times confidence equals consistent success, is to pay attention to the direction of air currents. Know and understand these currents, thermals, convections, and prevailing breezes, generally known as wind. There is no other hunting strategy that equals the importance of knowing wind and how it carries human scent and other odors to whitetails. White-tailed deer, especially bucks, survive predominantly through using their primary sense of smell. As deer hunters, we have all witnessed a buck questioning what he sees. He may doubt a message sent to him through his brain from his ears. But, as most hunters have also witnessed, he will never, under any circumstance, doubt the messages sent to him via his sense of smell. Deer use wind direction constantly as an aid to their movement, always allowing it to detect the relative safety of the paths they are traveling. Therefore, as hunters, we must be enlightened about currents of wind to be the best hunters, or predators, we can be. There are several components associated with wind. Meteorologists define wind as air in horizontal motion relative to the surface of the earth. This atmospheric motion, called wind, is better identified as ascending or descending currents, and not wind at all. As a hunter, you should always know from which direction the wind is coming, because this will tell you whether the wind is cooler, warmer, drier, or more moist than the air you are currently encountering. Along with the direction, the makeup of the wind should be noted. Is it beginning to shift or holding steady out of a certain direction? A change of direction in the wind could very well be a sign that a high-pressure system is about to move north or south of your location. If you can pick up this sign, then you can use this information to better plan your hunting strategies. Wind normally picks up during the day with an increase in the air's temperature, and it slows in the late afternoon around sunset. If the wind does not slow down come sunset, the barometric pressure is going to change. Deer movement always increases with changes in barometric pressure. If the wind does not decrease, or if there's very little change in the wind speed throughout the day, then the current weather condition will not be changing. In this case, deer will not be spurred to more than their normal activity, and you may want to try more active deer hunting tactics like calling or rattling. Wind currents include prevailing, convection, and thermal currents. Each can help or hurt a hunter depending upon a hunter's knowledge of each condition. Prevailing wind. Every state or region has what is called a prevailing wind. You should pay meticulous attention to the prevailing wind during the hunting season. Throughout much of the United States, it is the wind that emanates from the slightly south of west to the north of west. This prevailing wind direction is crucial to you when planning a stand's location. This is especially true when you are deciding whether to post in a field, bottleneck, or ravine. By not paying attention to the prevailing wind currents, Your scent can unknowingly be carried to deer who are not yet in eye or ear range. The result is you could spend hours on a stand without ever seeing a single deer simply because your scent was carried to them by a current of air you did not pay attention to. Prevailing winds are easy to determine in any area you hunt, and bar some unusual circumstance, you can count on these air currents blowing in the same direction day in and day out. Everyone down here in Texas knows of the South. Convection. Convection currents are nothing more than just another type of distinct circulation of air currents. What makes a convection current different from a prevailing wind is that a convection current is specifically indigenous to a particular section of terrain. Despite the prevailing wind, convection currents do their own thing, often blowing in an entirely different direction or directions than the existing prevailing breeze. Convection currents can be a real burr under your saddle if you don't know or understand what they can do. I first learned about convection currents many years ago, knowing what direction the prevailing breeze came from most of the time within a certain area I hunted. I set up on a ridgetop overlooking a steep draw so that my scent was carried away from the direction from which I knew the deer would come. After sitting in my stand for about an hour or so, I heard the distinct sound of crushing of leaves as deer approached. Excellent, I thought. The wind is blowing perfectly. They'll never know I'm here. Moments later, I saw two small bucks approaching my stand. Unconcerned, they steadily moved down the trail. About 50 yards from my stand, both bucks jammed on their brakes, and without an instant's hesitation, they whirled and disappeared back from where they came. I was dumbfounded and watched them run away as the wind gently blew against my face. I hadn't walked anywhere in the area from which they approached, and unless another hunter had, I just couldn't understand what went wrong. That evening, I was speaking to a friend about what happened. Coincidentally, this fellow was a high school science teacher, and although he didn't hunt, he had an immediate explanation for what might have happened to spook the deer the way I described. You understand that although you positioned yourself with the prevailing wind in your favor, that wind could have been upset or changed as it continued down toward you by some specific feature or features of the terrain at the exact location of your stand, don't you? No, I bashfully replied. Oh yeah, they're called convection currents. He went on to explain to me what a convection current was and how it can be directly opposite of a prevailing current. Basically, a convection current can develop as prevailing air currents are carried along their general direction by a large rock, an upsurge in land, a rock wall, or any other solid object with enough mass to deflect a current of air. These objects generally cause the prevailing wind fits by swirling them around in different directions before sending what's left on its way. Hence, convection currents take place vertically, and therefore can carry your scent both up and down. Quote, so although the prevailing wind was blowing in my face, the large rock ledge behind me caused the current to change direction and blow back toward the two oncoming bucks? I asked. That's right, he said. I never forgot that lesson. Now, whenever I set up to post in an area, I hang a large strand of black sewing thread from a branch, or my gun or bow, and watch to see how it blows in contrast to the prevailing wind direction. Sometimes I'm amazed to see it flagging off in every direction but the direction of the prevailing wind. Other times it will conform to the direction of the prevailing wind current. However, whatever it does, because I am now aware of convection currents, I can adjust or even change my location to compensate. To be absolutely sure of how a wind current is blowing, however, use an unscented powder. Several companies package them. Primo's has one called Wind Checker. Pete Rickard makes one called Wind Tracker. These spray powder devices, simply as they are, have been vital to my hunting success. Many hunters say they are not important to use on windy days when it's easy to detect wind direction. These hunters, like I once was, are not in tune to convection currents that, despite a prevailing wind, may be different. The unscented powder will definitely tell you which way your scent is blowing. These handy little devices are extremely helpful, however, when there is hardly any breeze at all. When there isn't a detectable wind, use a wind checking device. You won't regret it. Another easy method of understanding currents is to make entries into a logbook. After sitting in a certain stand for several days, take note of the air currents that prevail, despite the general direction of the wind. Log them and take advantage of the information for future hunts. Air that is being cooled off can also be a cause of convection current, but this is a less common cause of convection current than the other reason described above. Thermal current. The final air current that hunters should understand and know how to use a thermal current. A thermal current has specific characteristics. All hunters should pay attention to this phenomenon, especially when hunting in the early morning and late afternoon, when thermal currents are most active. At dawn, as temperatures usually begin to rise, the thermal current direction or flow is upward. As evening approaches, however, the temperatures begin to cool off. Thermal currents begin to fall. A hunter who takes a stand at dawn should position himself above the area where he expects to see deer. By doing so, his scent will rise skyward. However, the same stand should be avoided in the evening because his scent will be carried downhill. Okay, that's interesting. You can overcome the phenomenon created by thermal currents by acting the same way a buck would. All bucks have alternate runways leading to and from bedding areas. A buck who has survived just a couple seasons has learned how to keep the prevailing winds blowing in his face. The seasoned hunter should have alternate stands and should use these alternate stands in direct relationship to conflicting thermal, convection, or prevailing wind currents. By keeping wind uppermost in your mind, you will substantially increase your chances for success. Wind is the common enemy of all hunters, as it is the overall force responsible for carrying human scent and dispensing it throughout the woods. Inevitably, there isn't a hunter who can escape the fact that as humans we smell. No matter how hard we try, the very fact of the matter is, human odor cannot be totally eliminated. We can, however, control and minimize it, and therein lies an additional aid to success. So there's some good food for thought there when you're out there and maybe heading to your stand, or if you're sitting in a tree blind or something of that sort. We tend to hunt a lot out of enclosed blinds. So, you do have a couple of factors, I guess, that are involved there. Depending on where you park and how you walk to the blind, you can kind of pay attention to the wind there to see, is all that scent that I'm leaving going to be blowing constantly to, your feeder or whatever it is that pathway or whatever it is you're hunting over. Then the other thing is, when you're sitting in that blind, how tall is it? I believe that's a big factor in it. And how many windows do you have open in that blind? And which way is the wind blowing then at that point? So you got to kind of think through all those type of things. I will say, from my experience at least, I'd be curious to hear what your experience is. If you're in a kind of a tower blind, one that's at least 8 feet off the ground, let's say, more than likely you'll be okay scent wise. I mean, there's been so many times when I've been sitting in a blind like that and deer come right next to right by the feeder, even not 15 minutes after me walking into the feeder, and didn't seem like they really noticed the smell. Even those days when, those mornings where you get in the deer blind after a long night, hanging out around the fire, eating a lot of meat, possibly drinking a lot of beer, and, you got the wind, even that smell doesn't seem to affect them that much. But yeah, certainly the lower you are in a blind the closer to the ground you are in a blind, yes, obviously that matters. Another big factor, though, when you're sitting in these blinds too, is can they see you? Can they see through the window? Can they see your silhouette in the window? That's something else to kind of think about. But yeah, obviously this is all 100% valid whenever you're kind of sitting out in the nature, and you're not enclosed within a structure or something like that can kind of break the wind or stop the wind from blowing your scent all around. So anyway, does everyone, if you sit outside of the blinds and stuff, do you use some sort of wind gauge powder like he's describing, or what kind of scent blockers do you use? A lot of people like to use some scent blocker when they're sitting out there. I know for the bow hunters out there, they have all sorts of cool little contraptions ozone things and whatever else that'll, and of course your clothes. What do you wash your clothes in? These type of things. All sorts of cool gear out there to help you, cover up that scent. So all good foods for thought, as we go deeper and deeper into the deer season. It's curious, or it's interesting. I hadn't really thought about this, but, I guess we're getting into a lot of parts of the state right now are in the rut, or about to start the rut, I guess. And I wonder how much that actually matters to the buck at that point, or is he so fixated on that doe it wouldn't matter as much? I mean, that's not to say that you'd want to not do what you always do, but something to think about, something interesting to think about there. But yeah, with that, I think I'm going to leave y'all with that one, just to get you a little short and sweet continuation out there on some more whitetail strategies. The next time we'll be talking about, not quite to the rut yet, but we'll be talking about foul weather, deer hunting. So at least down here in Texas, it seems like maybe the more sometimes, or at least last several years, the more, or the deeper into December you kind of get, the foul weather becomes more of a consideration. So that'll be an interesting one to go through next time. There's a lot more to discuss in that topic. So get ready for that, buckle up, if you will. And with that, I just want to thank you for listening to this episode. And just to remind you, support your local feed store, support all the local businesses that are near your land. They're there to help you, and they really need your support, because when you need them, you want them to be there too. So with that, I will leave y'all, and y'all have a good one. See you on the next one.
Well, I hope the bandits gave you an interesting episode that either entertained or educated you. Or better yet, both. Hell, I told them this podcasting thing looks harder to do than defeating Santa Anna. So if you would, please help them out by sharing it with all your like-minded friends to help the bandits get the word out. And don't forget to check us out at feedbandit.com and grab some gear and apparel to support the cause of Texas. Remember, Texas, above all else, preserve the tradition, protect the legacy. Finally, as I said some time ago on the eve of the great battle, and I vigorously repeat here again, be men, be free men, that your children may bless their father's name. Well, fellow bandit, until next time.